They smiled in my face as they stole everything I'd built, my husband and my best friend. They thought I'd never noticed the missing paperwork, the subtle changes in the mortgage documents, the late-night whispers when they thought I was asleep. They told me it was just refinancing, just a simple formality, that I shouldn't worry, that I was too emotional, too sensitive, too naive. And I believed them. God, I believed them. Until the day I got the notice. Eviction. My name gone from the deed. My home, our home, signed away like I was nothing. That day, something inside me broke. But it wasn't my heart, it was the illusion that I could trust them. They thought I'd crumble, that I'd pack my bags and disappear quietly. They didn't know me at all. I was a mother, and a mother fights, a mother destroys. They took everything, and I was about to take it all back. I always thought betrayal would come with fireworks, that it would feel loud, explosive, unmistakable, like a sudden car crash or a house fire. But the truth is, it starts quiet, insidiously quiet. A missed phone call you don't think twice about, a late-night text message hastily deleted, a document you don't remember signing waved away with a casual, "Oh, it's just for the bank, honey." A glance exchanged across a dinner table too quick for anyone else to catch, but sharp enough to leave a tiny, invisible splinter in your mind. A soft, sharp shift in the way your best friend laughs at your jokes, just a little too forced, a little too bright. The way your husband's eyes glaze over when you speak like he's already in another room, another life. That's how it began for me, for Sarah. Mark and I had been married for 15 years. We weren't perfect, God knows we had our share of fights, the slammed doors, and the stony silences that eventually thawed. But we'd built a life brick by ordinary brick. A modest house with a white picket fence that always needed a fresh coat of paint and a creaky porch swing Ethan loved to nap on during lazy summer afternoons. Our son Ethan was 10 now, bright, sensitive, a little shy, with a mop of brown hair perpetually falling into his eyes. He loved science experiments that usually ended in minor kitchen disasters and drawing elaborate comic books filled with superheroes only he understood. He was the light of my life, the steady beat of my heart, the reason I got up every morning even when exhaustion gnawed at me, and the reason I stayed up late at night balancing the checkbook, making sure the mortgage got paid, the lights stayed on the fridge, stayed full. I was the family accountant, the planner, the worrier. Mark always said I was good at it, that he couldn't manage without me. Turns out he was planning to manage quite well without me, just with everything I'd managed for us. And then there was Julia, my best friend since college. We'd shared dorm rooms, bad haircuts, cheap wine, and dreams of the future. Julia, who could light up a room with her dazzling smile and infectious laugh. Julia, who knew every secret I possessed, every tear I'd shed over failed exams or foolish boys, every dream I'd dared to whisper out loud in the dark. Julia had been there when Mark and I started dating, cheering us on. She was my maid of honor, her heartfelt speech at our wedding bringing tears to everyone's eyes, including mine. Ethan called her Aunt Julia. She was family, the sister I never had, or so I thought. The naivete of that thought now scalds me. It started, or at least the first discernible tremor in the earthquake that would shatter my world, with a dinner party, a casual get-together at our house. Just a few friends, good food, easy conversation. Mark was pouring wine, his hand brushing against Julia's as he handed her a glass. Julia was laughing, her head tilted back, her eyes sparkling. And I was doing what I always did, making sure everyone was fed, the plates were cleared, the conversation flowed smoothly, the invisible gears of hospitality turning seamlessly. But something felt off, a discordant note in a familiar melody. I caught Julia's hand resting on Mark's arm a little too long as they stood by the fireplace. Saw the way his eyes lingered on her when she wasn't looking. Or maybe she was looking and they shared a silent secret language I was no longer privy to. Maybe they thought I wouldn't notice, too busy refilling water glasses or worrying about dessert. I told myself I was imagining things, that I was tired from my part-time job, overworked from managing the household, probably just feeling a little underappreciated. Paranoia, I chided myself. You're being ridiculous, Sarah. Then the mail came, a few weeks later. A thick, crisp envelope stamped with official-looking insignia addressed to Mark, but with my name printed faintly almost as an afterthought in the corner beneath his. I opened it without thinking. He always said I handled the bills, the paperwork, the boring adult stuff. He trusted me with it, he'd say, with an affectionate pat on my head. The irony is a bitter pill. And there it was, a stack of documents, a transfer of deed, a sale agreement. Legal jargon swam before my eyes, blurring into an incomprehensible mess. And then, at the bottom of a critical page, a signature. My signature. Or a very, very good forgery of it. Scribbled neatly, confidently. My stomach dropped, plummeted through the floor. My breath hitched. I flipped through the papers, my hands trembling so violently they could barely hold them. The house, our house, the one with the white picket fence and the creaky porch swing, was no longer ours. It had been sold. Months ago. For a price significantly below market value, I noted with a detached sense of horror. And I, Sarah Miller, had apparently willingly signed off on it. I felt the room tilt, the walls closing in the air, thickening, making it hard to breathe. I sank into a kitchen chair, the official papers spread out across the table like the scene of a brutal, intimate crime. When Mark came home that night whistling, carrying a takeout bag from our favorite Thai place, I confronted him. I couldn't wait. The words were acid on my tongue. "What is this?" I asked, my voice a hoarse, shaking whisper. The papers lay between us, an indictment. He barely flinched. He looked at the documents, then at me, his expression one of mild surprise, quickly morphing into practiced concern. "Oh, that. It's just refinancing Sarah." He said, his voice smooth, infuriatingly calm, rehearsed. "We talked about this, remember, to lower the payments." "No, Mark." "No, we didn't," I whispered, the ground crumbling beneath me. We had talked vaguely about refinancing months ago. Yes, but nothing concrete. No papers signed, certainly not a sale. He smiled then. The kind of condescending, dismissive smile that makes your blood run cold, that tells you you're being foolish. "You probably forgot. You've been so stressed lately with Ethan's school play and your deadlines at work. Don't worry your pretty little head about it." He reached out to pat my hand. I snatched it away. Julia called later that night. Her voice was a symphony of warmth and reassurance, honey-sweet and treacherous. "Mark told me you were a bit upset about some paperwork, sweetie." "Don't worry, honey, it's all just a misunderstanding. You know how complicated all that legal jargon is, so many signatures, so many forms. It's easy to get confused. Mark's taking care of everything." I wanted to believe her. Oh God, how I wanted to believe that familiar, comforting voice, the voice of my best friend. I almost did. My mind, desperate for an anchor, clung to her words. A misunderstanding. Yes, that must be it. Until I saw the text message. Later that night, after I'd pretended to go to sleep, my mind a raging inferno. Mark's phone left carelessly unlocked on the kitchen counter while he was in the shower. A new message notification lit up the screen. My heart pounded. I knew I shouldn't, but an irresistible force pulled me towards it. A message from Julia. "It's done. She suspects something about the papers but bought the refinancing line. She has no clue about us or the full extent of it. We're in the clear. Soon, darling, soon." I felt the world tilt again, but this time, I caught myself. The fog of confusion, of desperate hope, evaporated, replaced by a glacial clarity. The pieces clicked into place with sickening precision. The lingering touches, the shared glances, the missing paperwork I'd vaguely noticed but dismissed, the subtle changes in Mark's behavior, Julia's overly solicitous calls. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a meticulously planned betrayal. A theft not just of my home, but of my life, my trust, my past. And I knew with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, cold and hard as steel. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. They thought they had won. They thought I was weak, easily duped, easily broken. They didn't know the fire they had just ignited. The first few days were a blur of barely suppressed panic and a white, hot, silent fury. The eviction notice, formal and brutal, arrived a week after I found the sale agreement. It stated we had 30 days to vacate, 30 days to see my life dismantled. Mark feigned outrage and confusion for Ethan's benefit, promising to sort it all out. Julia offered tearful sympathy over the phone, even suggesting Mark and Ethan could stay with her for a little while if things got really bad. The audacity was breathtaking. I played along. I had to. I was still reeling, trying to understand the sheer scale of their deceit. How had they managed the forgery so perfectly when I realized Mark must have had access to my signature from countless other documents I'd signed over the years, trusting him implicitly? He'd always handled our important filings. The missing paperwork mentioned in my initial shock now made sense. He must have been siphoning off originals, creating a false trail. My first coherent thought was Ethan. He couldn't lose his home, his stability, because of their greed. That thought became my North Star. I started digging quietly, meticulously when Mark was at work and Ethan at school. I was a woman possessed. I scoured our old joint bank account statements online going back years. I found unusual withdrawals transfers to accounts I didn't recognize. Small at first, then larger. Money being slowly bled from our savings. I cross-referenced dates with Mark's credit card statements, which I also had access to online. Dinners I wasn't invited to. Hotel bookings in nearby towns listed as business trips. Gifts. So many gifts. For Julia, clearly. I found old emails, not on our shared computer. Mark was too clever for that, but I remembered an old cloud storage account we'd used for family photos. Buried deep in a mislabeled folder, I found scans of documents, early drafts of agreements, even a few deleted emails between Mark and Julia that had somehow synced. They were discussing the plan over a year ago, discussing how to make it look legitimate, how to handle Sarah's emotional reaction. They talked about selling the house, investing the money in a new business venture Mark and Julia were planning, and then, eventually, breaking the news to me gently perhaps, offering me a small insulting settlement once they were established. They were rewriting my future without my consent. The subtle changes in the mortgage documents I'd vaguely recalled from the hook of my own despairing thoughts were probably earlier attempts at refinancing or securing loans that I had signed, thinking they were routine, which they then used as templates, or to lift my signature. I took screenshots. I downloaded everything onto a thumb drive, hiding it carefully. Each piece of evidence was a fresh stab of pain, but also a small piece of ammunition. I knew I needed a lawyer, but good lawyers cost money. Money I suddenly didn't have access to. Our joint accounts were nearly empty. Mark had systematically drained them. I found a legal aid society that offered a free initial consultation. A tired-looking lawyer named Ms. Evans listened patiently, her expression becoming grimmer as I laid out my story and the few printouts I dared to bring. "This is a nasty situation, Mrs. Miller," she said, her voice sympathetic but frank. "Proving forgery can be difficult and expensive. Proving collusion and intent for criminal fraud is even harder. Your husband and his associate will claim you signed willingly, that you were aware. It becomes he said, she said, and civil litigation to recover assets can take years, cost a fortune you don't have. She advised me to gather every shred of concrete proof of their intent to defraud me and their affair, as that could provide leverage." I left her office feeling a fresh wave of despair, but also a flicker of defiance. Ms. Evans had been realistic, but she hadn't said it was impossible. Mark and Julia, meanwhile, grew bolder. Julia started visiting the house more often, ostensibly to support me and Mark through this terrible ordeal of the impending eviction. She'd bring groceries offer to watch Ethan. Her eyes, however, held a glint of triumph. They were measuring for new curtains in my living room, figuratively speaking. Mark was openly affectionate with her in ways he hadn't been with me for years. They thought I was too broken, too stupid to see. One afternoon, while Mark was out and Julia was helping me pack some boxes, the gall she picked up a framed photo of me and her from our college graduation. "We've been through so much together, haven't we? Sarah," she said, her voice dripping with false sentiment. "I'll always be here for you." I wanted to scream. Instead, I smiled faintly. "You're a true friend, Julia." Inside, the ice was forming. My plan was beginning to coalesce. It wouldn't be enough to just get my house back. They had tried to erase me. I would make sure they were unforgettable, but for all the wrong reasons. My counter-offensive began not with lawyers, but with their reputations. Julia worked as a marketing manager for a mid-sized local company, a company that prided itself on its family values and ethical image. I started by looking into her professional life. It wasn't hard. She often boasted about her projects. I found her LinkedIn profile, her company's website. I wondered if her employers knew about the kind of ethics she practiced in her personal life. Then I turned to our mutual friends. Mark and Julia had likely been poisoning that well for months, painting me as unstable, difficult. I started reaching out one by one, not with accusations, but with quiet, factual statements. I'm going through a difficult time. Mark is leaving me, and it seems Julia is involved. There are also some serious financial irregularities with our house that I'm trying to understand. I'd show them a carefully selected piece of evidence, a bank transfer, a copy of the suspicious deed. Some were shocked. Some were skeptical, clearly having heard Mark and Julia's version. But seeds of doubt were sown. One evening, Mark's parents called. They'd heard from Mark that I was being irrational and making things difficult regarding the necessary house sale. I listened calmly, then I said, "I understand that's what Mark told you. I have some documents I think you should see. For Ethan's sake, can I email them to you?" Reluctantly, they agreed. I sent them copies of the forged deed, some of the damning emails between Mark and Julia discussing their plans, and proof of the drained bank accounts. The call I received from them the next day was very, very different. His mother was crying. His father was apoplectic with rage at Mark. They weren't going to financially rescue him from this. The real breakthrough with Julia came unexpectedly. A disgruntled former colleague of hers whom I found through a mutual acquaintance who had started believing my story reached out. She'd heard rumors about Julia's cutthroat tactics at work. She provided me with emails where Julia had taken credit for others' work and even hinted at using company resources, like client databases, for personal ventures. While not directly related to my house, it painted a picture of her character. I compiled everything into a new, thicker folder, neatly organized. The original thumb drive was my treasure. I made multiple backups. The eviction date loomed. We had less than a week. Mark was becoming increasingly arrogant, Julia practically living with us. They were discussing renovation plans openly in front of me. The climax came not in a courtroom, but in our living room, the one they were so eager to redecorate. I had called another family meeting, Mark, Julia, and by my quiet insistence to Mark's now horrified parents, Mark's father, Mr. Miller Sr., a stern, old-school businessman who valued integrity above all. I had also, on a whim, invited Ms. Evans, my legal aid lawyer, as an observer. "What's this all about, Sarah?" Mark asked, annoyed. "We're busy." Julia sat beside him on my sofa, holding his hand. "I just have a few things I want to clarify before I pack my final bags," I said, my voice calm, steady. Ethan was safely at a friend's house. I laid out my evidence on the coffee table. The bank statements, the emails, the scanned documents from the cloud, the printout of Julia's questionable work emails, and finally a report from a handwriting expert Ms. Evans had helped me find on a pro bono basis confirming my signature on the deed was a highly skilled forgery. Mark went pale. Julia's confident smirk faltered. "This," I said, my voice like a chip of ice, "is a summary of your systematic theft and betrayal over the past 2 years. Mr. Miller Sr. looked at his son with utter contempt. "Mark, is this true? Did you forge her name? Did you steal from your wife, from the mother of your child?" Mark stammered. "Dad, it's complicated." Sarah agreed. "She's just emotional." "Emotional," I interrupted. "Or rightfully furious, Julia, your company might be interested to know how you conduct your affairs, both personal and professional. I have a contact in their HR department." Julia flinched as if struck. Then I turned to Mark. "And Mark, your father isn't the only one who will see this. The bank that approved that fraudulent sale based on a forged document, they'll be very interested. So will the IRS when they see the undeclared income from the sale funneled into your new business accounts." Ms. Evans spoke up quietly. "What Sarah is describing constitutes multiple felonies, including wire fraud, bank fraud, and aggravated identity theft. The penalties are severe. Jail time is a distinct possibility." The room was silent, save for Julia's barely audible gasp. Mark looked like he was going to be sick. The arrogance was gone, replaced by raw, naked fear. They had underestimated me. They thought I was just a quiet, accommodating wife and mother. They hadn't counted on the methodical, cold fury of a woman who had nothing left to lose fighting for her child's future. The reckoning was swift, though the legal process was, as Ms. Evans predicted, slower. Faced with incontrovertible evidence and the threat of criminal charges, Mark and Julia crumbled. Their affair, built on deceit, couldn't withstand the pressure. They started blaming each other. Under duress from his father and the very real threat of prosecution, Mark agreed to sign a settlement. The house sale was nullified as fraudulent. The deed was restored to my name solely. He had to liquidate his share of their new business, which was already floundering, to repay the money he'd stolen from our joint accounts and to cover my legal fees. He was left with very little. Julia lost her job when her company got wind of the situation. An anonymous tip, along with a package of evidence, found its way to her CEO. Her reputation was in tatters. Our mutual friends, now fully aware of the truth, shunned her. The eviction notice became a relic of a battle I had won. I didn't have to leave my home. It wasn't easy afterward. The sense of betrayal lingered like a phantom limb. Trusting anyone again felt impossible for a long time. Ethan, though shielded from the worst, knew his parents were no longer together and that Aunt Julia wasn't welcome anymore. We had many difficult conversations, but we also grew closer, a small, resilient unit of two. I rebuilt my life slowly but surely. I found a better job. I painted the picket fence. The creaky porch swing still swayed in the summer breeze, a reminder of what I had fought for, what I had saved. My revenge wasn't about fiery destruction in the traditional sense. It was a cold, calculated dismantling of their lies, their reputations, their ill-gotten gains. It was about reclaiming not just my home, but my dignity, my security, and my son's future. They smiled in my face while they stole everything. They forgot that a mother pushed to the brink doesn't just cry. She collects evidence, she plans, and then she takes it all back with interest. They learned that day the hard way about the silent, unyielding fury of a mother. And it was a lesson I knew they would never forget.